In the last episode, we sailed 250 nautical miles from Annapolis to our new destination in New York. Sailing to New York has been on our bucket list for a long time, and now it's finally happening. It was a good sail with lots of emotions as we reached our goal. The mooring field we chose, after recommendations from fellow sailors, is located in Sheephead Bay and belonged to the Miramar Yacht Club. The bay is well protected, and we felt good leaving Linnea here for the day. For being in New York, the moorings are reasonably priced, and it's easy to jump on the subway and end up in the middle of Manhattan. At first, we felt totally disoriented by so many impressions at once. People, cars, sounds. It felt like it was so much of everything, and it was all very overwhelming. It might sound a bit silly, but living the cruiser's lifestyle like we do, we are more accustomed to remote anchorages with sandy beaches and few people than the loud and vibrant sounds of the city. It felt like someone had picked us up in our normal slow life and just dropped us straight into the city and thrown us into this crazy tempo. But as sailors, we are also used to adapting to new situations, and after that first shock had worn off, we happily spent a couple of days exploring the city, visiting iconic sites, looking at all the tall buildings, and for the first time in a very long time, we got to enjoy some really good vegetarian food. We had made a list of things we wanted to see and do, and we spent our time walking around, taking off as many items as we could. We had friends who arrived to stay with us for the week, and together we hoisted the sails and sailed towards the anchorage we had not really dared dreamed of visiting. We rounded Brooklyn and pointed the bow straight at the Manhattan skyline. Manhattan may be a cool place to visit, but I could argue that it's even better when you see it grow closer and closer, bigger and bigger, as you approach it from the water. We are sailing into New York. We are going to anchor by the Statue of Liberty. We're very soon there, so we can see the statue, we can see the entire Manhattan skyline. It's just so cool. My balloon. So this is our anchor spot for the night. It's crazy that you're actually allowed to anchor here, and it's definitely one of the cooler spots we have ever dropped our anchor, with the Statue of Liberty at one side and the entire Manhattan skyline at the other. We were even lucky with the weather. as the winds were very gentle, not pushing a big swell in from the Atlantic, making it a pretty comfortable evening and night. We popped up the cockpit tent so that we could sit outside and enjoy the spectacular view as it grew darker and all the city lights were turned on. Even though we already were pretty close, we couldn't resist the temptation of getting a bit closer. The area around Liberty Island is restricted and only vessels with permissions are allowed to enter. We launched our dinghy to make a private Liberty Island tour. Even though we couldn't get all the way in, it was pretty damn cool to be so close. And it felt even more unreal as we knew we had made it here with our own boat. As the winds were going to turn, making this spot less ideal, we had decided that we were going to move with the current in the morning. It was time to tick off another item on the bucket list as we entered the East River and started sailing straight through New York. When you are by the Statue of Liberty, you have three options. You can head up the Hudson River, enter the East River, or head out to the Atlantic again. This, together with the ships from the harbor of New York and all the tour boats going to Liberty Island, makes it a very crowded piece of water to cross. But look at that view. The two bridges are the Brooklyn Bridge and then the Manhattan Bridge. It is important to time the currents right here, as they get very strong in the strait, especially a bit further up in the area called Hell Gate, where the current is the most fierce, reaching above 5 knots. Therefore, we timed our passing through Hell Gate when it would be as little current as possible, making the entire journey as smooth as possible. And maybe it was good that we had a time to keep, because even if the skyscrapers are nice to look at when you are in the city, they look even cooler from this perspective. It's hard to take your eyes away from everything around you, and we can easily see ourselves doing this again in the future. We entered the Long Island Sound and took a mooring in Port Washington, from where we had heard it would be just as easy to take the train into the city again. We spent another fantastic day in New York, walking the High Line, having a typical American brunch, and watching a show on Broadway. All too soon it was time to continue, so we could drop off our friends again. We stayed in Port Jefferson at Anchor, and it was crowded with Americans, out for the first real spring weekend of the season.